Hello, everyone. My name is Abigail Key, and I'm going to be presenting the poster titled Characterizing Echocardiogram-Associated Discharge Delays, a Phase 1 Quality Improvement Study. So, we all know that OSU Medical Center manages a very high volume of patients with cardiac-related conditions, whether that be heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, STEMI, NSTEMI, um, and echocardiograms are a critical key component in evaluating those patients, whether there be a clinical status change. Getting an echocardiogram is extremely important, especially um, to determine our clinical management of that patient. And delays in obtaining these echocardiograms could potentially contribute to an increased hospital stay, especially when these patients are admitted over the weekend, because as we know, we do not currently have in-house echo services on the weekends unless we call them in for an urgent or emergent echocardiogram. So, looking at the objectives of this study, to characterize the frequency of echocardiogram associated discharge delays in hospitalized patients. So, how many patients are experiencing discharge delays from echocardiograms not being able to be done over the weekend? We also wanted to evaluate the echo turnaround time and its impact on discharge timing, and then also just kind of identify some workflow factors, including ordering practices, documentation limitations that could potentially influence the delays in these echoes. So, for our methods, this was a retrospective review of inpatient orders over a 7-month period. To be included in this study, the echocardiogram had to be ordered after hours, so Friday after about 3 p.m. through Sunday. Exclusion criteria, just any order not meeting the inclusion criteria. And then for the analysis, this was a double blind independent review to determine whether or not the echocardiogram delayed the patient's discharge, and then if there were any discrepancies, they were resolved by a consensus between the two reviewers. And this approach was essentially designed to isolate cases where the echo timing could potentially impact discharge. So, looking at our results, figure 1, there were a total of 2,225 echoes ordered during that 7-month time frame. Once again, to be included, the echo had to be ordered over the weekend. The patient had to be on the echo list for Monday, and the patient also had to be on the pending discharge list. So that's a very important point that I want to make. The resident had to update the expected discharge date in order for the echo to fall into this inclusion criteria. Of those 2,200 echoes, 56 of them met criteria, so about 3%. 13 of the 56 patients did experience a discharge delay, and 43 of the 56 did not. On figure 2, this shows the average days to complete an echo if it is ordered over the weekend. And for this pool of patients, the average was about a day and a half. And then figure 3, kind of looking at the percent of patients that their discharge was delayed, and that ended up being 23% of patients that we reviewed had a delay in their discharge. Looking at the discussion and some key findings. So, echocardiogram related discharge delays are very difficult to quantify using retrospective data, the data that we currently have, because of workflow confounders, such as residents have to update the expected discharge date in order for the echocardiogram to be included in the data set. Also, I know I've done this. Residents typically don't, I shouldn't say typically. I've done it. I know multiple of my co-residents have, where if we have a patient admitted over the weekend, we just won't order the echo because we know it can't be done until Monday. And so we'll come in Monday, 5 a.m., order the echo then. And so that definitely affects whether or not we can look at this data accurately. And then inconsistent, incomplete documentation definitely affects the data reliability. And then these factors likely lead to an underestimation of the true impact on discharge timing. So, in conclusion, echocardiogram related discharge delays are likely underestimated due to workflow driven confounders, including delayed ordering practices and documentation limitations, like I mentioned before. Some future directions: we want to be able to evaluate the impact of weekend echocardiogram availability independent of expected discharge date being updated. So, looking at this data as a whole and taking out the confounding variable of residents have to update the expected discharge. I think that would give us many more echoes to review and potentially have a better impact. And then ultimately, for the phase 3 study, we want to be able to perform a cost analysis comparing financial impact of discharge delays versus implementation of a weekend echo staff. I think ultimately that's the goal with this project, is to determine, would the hospital be able to save money by hiring a weekend echo tech? Would that be beneficial and potentially decrease patients' hospital stays? Thank you very much for your time.